I've noticed a pattern that's coming up in the sharing circle and in individual sessions and in myself too. Like I'm seeing a pattern, and when that happens, I often talk about it in a blog. So here I am about to talk about it in a blog. So this pattern is that a lot of people, their challenge or the thing they're trying to create in their life would benefit if they would give themselves more information. Okay, I hear myself say it to clients and in sharing circle and to myself. If you give yourself more information, it's actually going to make it easier to determine, and it's going to move the process on. It's going to give you more clarity. Okay, but it does not feel like that. It feels like if we give ourselves more information, it's going to be more overwhelming, which is the emotion, and more confusing, which is the mind. And so we don't, okay? But my premise is we're kind of cheating ourselves, we're ripping ourselves off by not giving ourselves more information. Okay, and I think there's a reason for it. In our world, in today's world, we get bombarded by a lot of information, and it can be overwhelming, both intellectually and emotionally. It can be overwhelming. Okay, so we get to the point where I think my theory is we get overwhelmed, and then on an issue or on a project or on something we're trying to accomplish, we get overwhelmed, and then we kind of close the doors. We shut it down. It's like I'm on overload, red alert, shut it down. No more information gets in. I'm going to figure this out with the information that I have. So then they bring it to me in a session, and it becomes obvious, okay, not because I'm smart, I'm getting some help, from spirit as well. But it becomes pretty obvious that if they opened the doors and allowed themselves, that the reason they're not able to resolve their problem is they don't have enough information. So the information they have isn't sufficient to solve the problem. Okay, so then I say, well, perhaps you should give yourself more information. And then they look at me like I don't know, like I'm a terrible person for suggesting that, because they're already overwhelmed. And they're like, look, I'm already confused. If I add more information, it's going to make it more confusing and more overwhelming. And that is not necessarily true. A lot of times, if we give ourselves more information, it actually becomes easier to make the decision. Because we're used to making decisions by crossing things off. Nope, it's not this. No, it's not this. And there is a time for that. Maybe later on, if, the elimination can work well. But earlier in the process, when we get stuck, it's really useful to allow yourself to have more information. It's less linear, it's like we have the one thing that we're trying to make happen. This is more global, okay? We're more circular. We're allowing information in from a lot of places. We put out an intention, as I often talk about, and then we allow doorways to come in, and then we explore different doorways, and each doorway gives us more information. Now, the act of faith, if you will, is trusting that if I give myself more information, more doorways, if I give myself, if I put some of the slang I've used is if I put more horses in the race, or if I cast a wider net, is another way I've talked about it. Like when dating or looking for a job, cast a wider net. All of those are more information, right? Bigger, more expansive. The theory and the faith is if I do those things and give myself more information and expand my search, if you will, it's actually going to provide more clarity. And it's not how it seems. Okay, it doesn't feel that way. It feels like if I give myself more information, it's going to become less clear. Okay, so I'm not asking you to believe me on this, but I'm asking you, I'm inviting you to try it. If you're stuck on something, try expanding your search. Try putting more horses in the race. Try allowing more doorways in. Try making some other calls, some other inquiries. Try asking some other questions and giving yourself more information. Okay, now it is, I'm not going to lie, it is, especially until you get used to working this way, it is overwhelming because, again, we're on information overload in our culture, and it is often out of our comfort zone. It becomes more comfortable when you do it more. It's more comfortable for me to do now than it was 5 years ago, you know, and so it becomes more comfortable. But it can feel a little overwhelming. But the trust and the faith is that if I give myself more information, it's actually going to get me where I want to go better. Okay, because what happens is it starts getting more clear. Okay, it's like, oh, the thing I want, it's a little like this, but that's not quite it. But I end up getting a better thing. It's like if you put 3 quotes in when you're getting your plumber to come, you might get a better deal. It's like if you look at several houses when you're buying a new house. Yes, it's overwhelming. It'd be way easier to just go to one house, you like it, you buy it. And then there's nothing wrong with that. But if you have yourself look at 20 houses, you know, or more, then you start noticing which ones are a better deal and which ones aren't. You start noticing the nuances, and the more information makes it easier to make your decision. Okay, and not only that, but the quality of your decision and the quality of the thing you end up with, whether that be a house, whether that be a significant other, whether that be a job, whether that be, you know, whatever it is, a career, whatever it is you want, if you expand your search a little bit and deal with that overwhelm and trust that if I give myself more info, it's gonna, in the long run, because you know, they kind of, a lot of these will cancel each other out. Okay, and then it's gonna become more obvious what is the better thing. That's the magic. Is like, we think it's gonna be overwhelming, but when we put the diversity in and the additional information, the information makes it more, this is my truth, makes it more obvious, especially on some things. Makes it more obvious, and then it becomes more of a no-brainer decision. And also, because I gave myself more information, I had a bigger net, a bigger pool, a bigger resource pool to choose from. So the chances are I'm going to have a better house that I got for a better price. You know, because I had more options. And that's the part. The hard part, though, is to trust and to let itself work itself out. And a lot of it works itself out and becomes very obvious. And we just say, well, that house I thought was good, but now I realize it wasn't as good because I've seen 5 houses that are better than that, you know? And it ends up being kind of these no-brainer decisions, but it really requires you to kind of go swim upstream in your comfort zone a little bit, get out of your comfort zone would be a better metaphor, and allow more information and see if that helps, especially if you're stuck. Okay, because that's what I end up doing is I say, allow yourself more. Then they come back next week and they say, well, I allowed more information and now we know this. And now we have a lot more clarity, a lot more information to make an intelligent decision. So, challenging thing to talk about, probably a challenging thing to listen to, but I'm going to leave it there, and I'm not going to redo this. I'm going to just leave it that way, and that is my video blog for this week. So thank you so much for watching. And as you have your week, my suggestion is, especially if you're stuck in a project or a situation, to just try to open the doors and allow in more information rather than battening down the hatches and overload, no more, no more, no more. open up the doors, allow yourself more information, trust, even do it as an experiment, that may add more clarity, even though it's kind of counterintuitive that it will. And I will see you in a week.